Okay, good morning. Thank you for coming out again this morning. We're kind of using this as sort of an adventure. This is getting back to our basics, why we do church the way we do, what we believe, and who we are. And so we're excited. We have a special guest this morning. Reverend Jim McCune is here from the conference as a disaster relief coordinator. He's going to talk to us about missions. Becky, I know, has an announcement that she would like to make.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell everybody that Larry and Patty and Dan and I have been bringing snacks and cookies and coffee, tea, cocoa, water, curries, all that stuff up in the higher grounds room, and we want to invite everybody to come up between Sunday school hour and church. And if anybody would like to, in the future, provide food or snacks for in there for a Sunday, just let me know. We're trying to keep it real simple. We're just using store-bought cookies, easy stuff. No homemade things. We don't want to get into that, because if we do, then nobody will want to do it.
All right, thank you. As we open this morning, are there special prayer concerns that you wanted to lift up this morning?
Lynette Edon is driving.
She is driving. She,
Driving back.
for her birthday, she said the best thing would do for me to go to Pennsylvania. So she was at Pennsylvania, but she went to the Penn State game. I know most of you would have liked to have been there as well, but she was at the Penn State game. And she had a good time. And she did say this morning, she said, I am planning on coming back. So that's always a good sign. So she will be on the road this morning. Anything else? All right. Let's continue to pray for our church and for its witness wherever we are. Let's begin with prayer. Father God, thank you for this time of learning and growth. We pray, Father, that you stir within us the soil that produces an abundant crop. We pray, Father, for our call to missions, to not only be takers of the good word, but also deliverers and seed bearers. Help us, Father, to listen and grow together as we share this witness, this faith. In Jesus' name, amen. So before I pass this over to Jim, I just wanted to highlight, because he's going to be talking about missions, the value of missions. And I actually saw a quote earlier this week from a guy by the name of Leslie Newbegin. And yeah.
Oh, well, mine's live.
Yeah, it's live. Okay, yeah. Leslie Newbegin once said that the church is to mission what fire is to burning. Almost as if they're one and the same, right? To be a faith community means to be in witness and in service, right? So we're going to be talking about that. We're talking about, I just threw in some stuff from the United Methodist Church, UMCOR, our Committee on Relief, the connectional value that we have as United Methodist. And many of you know that just down the road here, we have New Vision Depot, which is was part of that connection. We're going to be talking about that a little bit. That's New Vision Depot. Our missions, our local missions, Folk. For those of you that, many of you probably already know about Folk, connecting and helping those that are in crisis, doing some packing. Our calling is to be a ray of sunshine. Right? Somebody that says life isn't all just hardship and depression. We also have a Saul ministry, right? Those guys that work tirelessly to give people freedom from their homes by providing ramps and other home improvement. So I just wanted to share all of that so that you knew about the missions of the church. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jim. And if you just clip that on you somewhere, that'd be fantastic.
How does it? Oh, right here.
Yeah, there's the clip.
Do it that way.
Whatever works.
I don't want to press the button. How's that? All right.
That works.
Okay. Good morning. I'm going to speak loud because to make sure everybody hears me. My wife says, she knows I'm very shy usually. Har har. We have a couple of retired firefighters among our 88 early response team trained people. And they say that about what your analogy about the fire is that if you sign up to be an early response team member, then unless something drastic gets in the way, when we need you now. And these are people that don't show up with the fire department or the ambulance or the National Guard, but they show up very soon thereafter to start clean up, muck out, and their priority is to get people in their homes as quickly as we can. In a little bit, I'll show you some pictures to give you some ideas of what we try to do, and that's going to be everything from mucking out houses and getting the mold out to getting tarps on the roofs that are FEMA heavy-duty tarps that will last 1 or 2 years, if need be, before the contractors are able to get in there and do their work, or before we go back with teams to do our work as well. So all kind of, there's an urgency about that, and those folks are great, dedicated people. We had a great percentage of them showed up in Kanawha County when we needed them most after 10 tornadoes hit in April. And so right off the bat, I'll just tell you how much it means to us to have them in partnership, trained people ready to safely go in and to give hope to folks who need it the most. I want to start with, I was going to do a series of sermons over the, that's what pastors that retired do. They talk about series of sermons they were going to do that never, how that is. You never quite get around to it. But there was things that we don't want to talk about Jesus because some of Jesus' sayings, as you know, are very hard. They're hard to listen to. They're hard to comprehend. We want all the niceties, but sometimes Jesus demands a lot of his followers. And I think part of that is that in Christianity and in the church, when we enlist one another to work, when we seek out volunteers, we're seeking to raise the bar and the expectation that we need you to be here now. We need you to show up for this. We need to contact people immediately and one-on-one to make sure they hear that we need you. It's important for you to be there. It's not a general announcement, if you want to come kind of thing. And so hear what he says. The apostle said, increase our faith. He replied, and we know this one, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to the mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it will obey you. You can. Suppose one of you has a servant plowing or looking after the sheep. Will he say to the servant when he comes in from the field, come on along now and sit down and have something to eat? Won't he rather say, prepare my supper, get yourself ready, wait on me while I eat and drink, and after that you may eat and drink? Will he thank the servant because he did what he was told to do? So you also, when you have done everything you were told to do, should say, we are unworthy servants, we've only done our duty. Ouch, right? We're unworthy servants, we've only done our duty. How'd that be for a benediction on Sunday morning? Unworthy as we are. But he wanted to let them know how critical it was, how critical it is to serve your neighbors in need, to serve when there's situations of urgency, to serve from day to day, to be observant of the people that are set before you that need you to take care of them right away in the midst of their struggles, in the midst of their strife. Find this second quote here. Wesley had 3 simple rules, right? The simple rules, do no harm, you know them? Do no harm, do good, and attend to the ordinances of God, to do good. And when he talked about doing good, he said this, by being in every kind merciful after the power, as they have opportunity, doing good to every possible sort, and as far as possible to all men. There's your old language. Being good to your bodies, of the ability which God giveth, by giving food to the hungry, clothing the naked, visiting or helping them that are sick or in prison, to their souls by instructing, reproving, exhorting all we have, any intercourse we have, trampling underfoot that enthusiastic doctrine that we're not to do good unless our hearts feel free to do it. Which the rough translation I have for that would be, if we feel like doing it. That's not the answer to doing good. And Wesley held the bar, as you know, very high. And his whole notion of servanthood and expectations, which came out of the holy clubs, was that you're expected to give an accounting every week for the good things you have done and the deeds you have done. Not to brag about it, but to be ready to give an answer. So how is it with your soul? But also, what are the things that you have done this week to serve your neighbor? To serve your neighbor and to care for those that are in need. And that was a very high expectation. And sometimes I think that we're concerned if we have those high expectations that somehow or another we're going to chase people off. They're going to expect too much. But there are churches, like Church of the Savior was in D.C., had an expectation that when you signed on to being a part of that church, you signed on to be a worker. Everybody had a task. Every person in the church had a task and an expectation. And in Wesley's Holy Club, that was the case. Everybody had a task to do. When we do early response team and people get trained for that, I had people that we trained in Kaiser a couple of weeks ago. My buddy David Stilgenbauer, who does Volunteers in Mission, was our trainer, and I played the host for that. There were people there who were older than, I'm 68. There were people there that were closing in on 80 who were being trained to be early response. Now, they're not going to get in there and muck out with a shovel, but I'll tell you one thing. When I have to call them up and say, by the way, we got word that there's a house where a tree has fallen on it, it's in the middle of this road, and you live near there, would you please go take pictures and text them back to me? Tell me your assessment. It's just like this. Ben Wells, who used to be the chaplain at Marsh University for years and now pastors at Pea Ridge, I called Ben up, a buddy of mine, and said, Ben, he's in ERT. I said, I want you to go to Wayne County, and I named the road. I know that area. He was way out in the boonies, you know, great people, but it's way out this old dirt road, and take pictures and give me an assessment. And he calls me up, and he's from North Carolina. And so his response immediately was, now, Jim, this house was a mess before the storm. And it came down to this. It was too dangerous for anybody to get on that house. It wasn't fixable. So we called VOAD, which is the Volunteer Organizations Active in Disasters, and we said, can you call DHHR, right, Health and Human Resources, and have them send somebody out there to check on this person? They can't live there anymore. See how it works? The connectionalism in the United Methodist Church, but the connections we have ecumenically with so many people to make sure that those who are most vulnerable, who've had something happen to their homes, know that we're there. We had somebody in Bell. After the tornado, we went there in April, and they said, a tornado damaged my roof. And so me and Don Stilgenbauer, Dave's brother, got on this roof and looked at it and looked at each other and said, this wasn't the storm. It's worn out. I called her up and said, ma'am, we looked at your roof. We're pretty sure it's just worn out. And she says to me, really, she says, I just don't have the money to fix it. So I got on the horn and called Appalachian Service Project and said, there's this roof. It's an easy slant. It's a double wide. When you set up your team for this summer, and if you need money to help you with the shingles, we'll help you out. And we might even be able to send some volunteers to partner with you. And I saw him later in the meeting. He says, we're going to take care of that. So you see how this works. All these organizations that work with one another, but what we're able to do is and in West Virginia, it seems like you know everybody, or at least their cousins or somebody, you know, or you've been there, and you're able to make those connections to cover all your bases and make sure nobody feels left behind or unloved or uncared for, but need that part of the community. So I had a student, I'll tell you a couple little stories in a little bit here. I'm going to show you some different pictures, but I had a student at Kaiser, and we were going to go to Gilbert for the week. Gilbert had what they called the Mother's Day flood. And so we got in contact with Catholic Charities, got a hold of us and said, we're looking for teams to go. I said, we're going to take our team down there. I wanted my young people to meet coal miners. And they did. They met young coal miners coming off the job. It was awesome, right? We stayed in Gilbert at a Pentecostal church for a week and used the facilities in Gilbert. There they have a nice place down there. And they did this work. And this kid from Kaiser, he's like, I'm going to stay. I got work to do on my schoolwork. And I said, no, you're going to stay home and play video games. And, well, I wouldn't do that. And I said, and I bugged him. I usually don't do that. I usually do not guilt people into doing things. But something within me thought, I'm going to put the pressure on this kid to go to work. And finally he says a word I won't repeat. It says, I'll go. And he went. And he had a great experience. Now here's how God works. Because he did this, he went on, graduated from Potomac State College and then WVU, joined the Air Force, was in ROTC, joined Air Force, was assigned to Germany to help coordinate the reception for Ukrainian refugees. How about that? And I'd like to think that that started in Gilbert, West Virginia, with a kid who cussed at me and said, okay, I'll go. And turned out he found his heart, didn't he? And I love that about this kind of work. You get a lot of people who are shy about showing up and, well, what can I do? And I said, you see that person sitting up on the porch there? They're shell-shocked for what happened to their house. Go have a visit with them and ask them how they're doing. See what else they need. And we're going to take shovels and go under here and muck this out. So there's all these pieces of the puzzle that people can do. Everybody can do that. We are finding that one of my favorite passages, of course, is eyes on the sparrow, and all these kind of things. And the fact that God sees every hair fall keeps me thinking that God's been busy with me. But there are to be able to have your eye on the sparrow, the church is about that. That means that nobody's not important. I was in Kaiser visiting mother-in-law, who's coming up on 98th birthday, Donna's mama. And the phone rang at 8:30 one night. It's beating down the rain in Charleston, South Charleston. This woman calls me at 8:30 at night. I'm in Kaiser, and she says, are you the coordinator of disaster response? I said, yes. She says to me, I've got water coming in through my walls. Can you come? And I said, no, I can't come. It's 3 hours from here. But I told her, if you have a furnace, turn off your furnace if the water's getting near it. Oh, it's not. And I said, well, tomorrow, and I called Dave Stilgenbauer back, and I said, Dave, what do I do? Tell her to call the fire department tomorrow morning. They'll come pump it out for her. Next morning, I got up, and I remembered that there were two people who went to church in South Charleston at First Church, and I knew these people who lived not far from this woman, and I said, go check on her. One of the guys was a retired engineer. I said, I want you to check the house and make sure it's okay, and make sure she's okay. Because you know what she told me? I'm a widow. I've only lived here for a year, and I don't know anybody. We have found the common denominator among most of the people we're helping is they don't know anybody. There are funny stories about that, too, where you go to help somebody and the neighbors already did it because they all knew each other. But there are a lot of people, and you see the statistics on this, right? With cell phones and all that, a lot of adults even saying how lonely they are because they live here instead of here. So they went to check on her. The water had already receded. The furnace was fine. The hot water heater was fine. And she felt so reassured that these church folks came to check on her. And I don't know where it went from there. I hope she became a part of a congregation because that's a part of what we're doing. We're making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world, right? And so you want to be able to make that always a part of what you're about. But I love that George and Jane from South Charleston, West Virginia, to visit this lady because she had water coming in through her walls. I didn't have to do anything but lift up my phone and call. I love that connection that we have within United Methodism to make sure that folks who are in trouble have someone who are going to help them out. I appreciate another passage of Scripture I'll share with you just quickly. Is the story of Jesus sending out the disciples. And he says that he's sending them among wolves, the sheep among wolves, and he warns them about what could happen and how you need to wipe the dirt off your feet when you get there if they don't want you there. And I'm going to send you out to cast out demons and to heal the sick and raise the dead and to proclaim good news. Good news. What was the good news? What was the good news they proclaimed? Anybody? What's that?
Christ is Lord.
Christ is glory, yeah. Christ is born. Yeah, Christ is born. What did John the Baptist proclaim? The kingdom of heaven is at hand. And then Jesus, after John was arrested, proclaimed, kingdom of heaven is at hand. Right? Kingdom of heaven is at hand. So they go out and they're ready to wipe the dirt off their feet because they know it's going to be a horrible experience. Because Jesus told them it's going to be bad. It's going to be rough. That you get ready to wipe the dirt off your feet and turn your back on it. They all came back rejoicing. We saw, we healed the sick, raised the dead, drove out the demons, and they came back rejoicing. I always said they came back with dirty feet because they didn't wipe their feet off at all. They never had to. They never had to. I always wondered if Jesus knew going in, you're going to have a great time. It's going to be an awesome experience. But they came back like that, and they're all, victory dance and all that stuff, like WVU just beat Kansas, right? They're having a great time. And he said, I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning. But he says, don't rejoice in all that. Just rejoice that your names are what? Written in heaven. That's enough. That's enough. I talked to my group. We were working on a work the other day at Kanawha County, chainsaw work and hauling wood out of the way and all that for this older disabled veteran. And so we're doing all this hard work. And I said, people use the expression, I got more out of this than the people we helped. And I said, is that true? And they said, no. I said, that's exactly right. It is not always true. Matter of fact, on the days it is true, that's a great time. But there's a lot of times you go away from a project, helping somebody, what's the expression, no good deed goes unpunished? That sometimes you're just plain spent. You're worn out. You're not looking for appreciation. They're not going to send you a thank you note. They're tired, right? And you're tired. And you just want to get it done and be out of there. Because sometimes, when you come back, your feet are dirty. And Jesus is just saying, just be glad your name's written in heaven. You may or may not get any reward out of this. It may not be a feel-good day. Sometimes it is. But there are days you're just glad it's done. Glad it's done. I had this kid, the same story about Gilbert, a different young man, over the preacher's widow. And there's this narrow crawl space under this house. Thank God it was narrow. Why would I like that? Because I didn't fit. I put these skinny college kids underneath there to pull out wet insulation and put in dry. I saw this kid across campus that next winter, and I mentioned the woman's name, and I said, she has a nice warm floor now, doesn't she? And he says, yes, she does. And he just walked on. Yes, she does. That's sufficient, isn't it? That you knew you did right. So that's what I love about this work, all those kind of rewards that oftentimes may not give you a big buzz in the midst of it, but you know your names are written in heaven. You know you did right. I mentioned about ecumenism and about the kind of work we do. We were out at Beaver Creek. Anybody know where Beaver Creek is? Out of Poca. And there's all this flooding. The road was dropped out. Scary dropped out. I mean, we drove over something that later we found out had nothing under it. Glad the guy had a little Honda truck instead of a big Ford. We survived it. Met a guy named Roy from the Southern Baptist Church, took all these buckets out, couldn't even deliver them. And somebody came down. This young woman came back and coordinated everybody. They brought their side-by-sides, loaded them full of buckets. And Roy from the Southern Baptist Church led us in prayer. We prayed for her and for them. And he said, if you'll take them on out to where they need to be, but if you see anybody along the way that needs one, go ahead and give them one too, right? So suddenly we send others to take care of others. right? And you expand the size of your team and the amount of workers and disciples you have. And it was a neat experience. It was a neat experience. I was so proud of that young woman, but she just took the tiger by the tail, grabbed them all and said, here, let's go and get it done, right? Like an ERT personality, right? She's ready to go to work and to help people out. Okay, picture time. I'm going to press the correct buttons now, right? And this is a lot of this and that. This is no particular order, so ask questions if you want as you go. I don't know who that guy is there. This is what happens when you're tall. Two things happen when you're tall. One is you get to do the highest things that nobody else can reach. The second is you constantly crack your heads, and so which doesn't knock much sense into me. This is a woman in Bell, West Virginia. This massive tree falls on her shed. And this is a shed that she'd been making monthly payments on for just a few dollars a month for 48 months. You know how that is when you buy something like that. A nice shed. What she kept in that was yard sale stuff. But she'd sell it on Facebook. And so she had this stuff in there, and the building collapsed from these massive trees. We cut the trees out. We moved them out of the way. In the meantime, I got a call from a woman named Mary, who's with the Lutheran Church of West Virginia, who says, there's a Lutheran church down in Hurricane, West Virginia, who want to help on a project. I said, oh. So I called them up, and they met us out there. They helped fund us, and we helped fund it to make sure that it had enough money for the lumber, because this woman had an income period of $900 a month. And you know what she said to me? She said, no, I could pay you $100 a month toward the material. And I said, no, ma'am, I think we got it covered. So between us and the Lutherans, they went in and rebuilt. A youth group came in and emptied out the building. We rebuilt that structure for her, twice as strong, reinforced, and got her stuff moved back in. Got it all done. It took 2 days to build that back. We knew FEMA wasn't going to pay for that. But it was part of her livelihood to do those things, to sell those things. And she needed this. And she's a widow. I've told my grandson one day, Grandpa, you talk about widows all the time. I said, I don't want Jesus to get mad at me. And he said, what do you mean? I said, Jesus, among his favorite people are widows. And I said, we got to take care of the widows. That's important. That's a very important thing to do. So that's what we're doing here. That's the youth group that did the moving in. They were from Elizabeth Memorial Church. And it's amazing how quick you can move with a bunch of young people and young backs. More about that project there. Now there's a guy here who's working. This is Peter and Torika, okay? This is Mike, who's with the Lutheran Church. Peter and Torika was one of the first jobs we ever did in Cross Lanes. And I think we have some pictures coming up with their house. Peter and Torika said, Peter and Torika were from Romania. They remember the horrible dictator. You remember this guy? The story? Ceausescu. Terrifying person, a brute, evil. Anyway, they remember him being in charge. They drew a lottery through the United States Embassy, to migrate to America. And so if he wanted to go, he's going to have to marry her. And they referred to that as a very strange proposal. So he marries her, and she says, I got him to America. And so they moved to Los Angeles. Had a job there. She still has that same job. Anyway, but they decided they wanted to move somewhere less crowded and where wasn't much wind. Cross Lanes, West Virginia, on a hill. This beautiful house that needed to be redone, and they bought it. It's a fixer-upper big time. But he does this kind of work. Tornadoes came through, 3 massive trees fall on their house, crush it. We had 2 firefighters there who climbed way up to put the tarps in place. I was halfway up. I may be in one of our pictures. But they said something after we did it. First of all, they said, we thought this, she said, Peter lost hope that something would ever happen. And he basically had sat down on the floor of their house and had no hope left. And he says, and all of a sudden these pickup trucks showed up. Chainsaws, firefighters. And they ended up, in one day, taking those trees off that house and covering it. He said thought it would take a week or two to do that. This crew did it in one day. We were there a total of 4 times to get that old wood out of there and take it to the landfills. We didn't know what else to do with it. Took it to the landfills, and we were able to pay for that truck to take it to the landfill for other expenses, because when this all happened, UMCOR called and said, what can we do? And they sent us a $10,000 grant to cover expenses. That's what they did. I'll tell you another grant story in a second here, in a little bit here, but I wanted you to meet these two. They're delightful people, still discovering West Virginia. A great love for bluegrass music. Gee, do we have that around here? Little bluegrass? This is out in St. Albans. There was a flood. The governor did not declare a state of emergency with this, and I think the sense was it wasn't large enough of a flood to do this. So there's no money in place to get rid of this. No, it's there. There was only one house in that area that got hit because of everything, all the debris built up behind the bridge and flooded this one house, right? We went in there, I think I might have that picture. We went in there with a crew and a U-Haul and hauled all that stuff to the landfill. We had some young people come and help load it. It was nasty, but they were so happy. And the owner there, both of them, they're Native Americans. She was following behind us, picking up every little piece of scrap. You know how it is. You don't want a reminder of anything about that flood. I want it out of here now. And I'm like, oh, you don't have to worry about the rest of that. Don't worry. There wasn't anything but grass left behind. And they were so happy to get that cleaned up out of there. That's Peter and Tarika's yard. Don't pay attention to the man who didn't wear his mask during the chainsaw work. But we don't publish that one. Another one of those. This family is the ones I was mentioning that had all the debris in the yard. Donna was in a crew that went in, and there was a part of that connected to a garage that had concrete walls. They said, if you could clean that out, we can live here. So until the rest of the house is restored. I went in with a crew, we cut out the carpet that was in the house to dry it out and get the mold out. Our crew went in and washed down all the walls, cleaned the floor out, got it ready, but they had this huge doorway into that had no door. I don't know how many people I talked to, including Lowe's, trying to find me a door big enough to cover that. And out of the blue, I thought, a barn door. Put up a barn door. That's the barn door. And my guy from the Lutheran church, I called him up and I said, meet me at Lowe's. I got a project for you. And he brought his pickup truck, put the barn door in it. He and the homeowner there put that barn door on. It was perfect. Slides it, gave them their privacy, kept the critters out, allowed them to live there for some time now until the rest of the house had dried out. $500 for that barn door. Heavy duty. It ain't going nowhere. But that's, again, from that UMCOR grant. That's the stuff you're able to do. This is the landfill. That's Peter helping me unload some stuff. I don't know how many different days he worked with me because he kept saying, if you need anything at all, let me know. I said, Peter, we're going to the landfill. Well, I'll go with you. We're out there. I went around the other side, realized I couldn't find my car keys. And he's like, oh, Jim, what will we do? I said, I don't think I call AAA at this point. So we found them. They were actually in the dashboard. I was okay, and we got out of there. But the folks at the Canal Landfill were just awesome to help guide us through that. These are these guys. a mile away from Peter and Tarika's house in Cross Lanes. This is one of the last jobs we did, was to cut all this lumber out of people's yards, a level 3 job, and set it in a place where the guy could use it for firewood. This wood here was all in the neighbor's yard. And these guys, this is a great picture. They are whipped. They are absolutely whipped. So, anybody here know Steve? Yeah? You're Steve Hamrick? He was with me the other day, too. I've got some of his tools that ended up in the wrong place, so I'm going to give it to Jamie Walford to take back to him. Jamie's our conference treasurer, but he goes to Steve's church up in Ripley. Great guy. David, our coordinator for the Volunteers in Mission. These guys, Tim is from Harrisville, West Virginia. Bob is from Fairmont, retired firefighter. Also coordinates the COME event now and works a lot with our youth. Deb up here, we call her ground control because she won't get on a ladder that's more than 1 foot high. Yeah, you too, huh? And so that's fine. We need people like her to go and take care of other business. And then, the name, I'll come back to in a second. He was brand new that day, and he's a pastor over near Pinch, West Virginia. And there was a trailer that had been flooded. We went to do a job, and I asked if we could use their church for the bathrooms. It was like 100 degrees out. And he went and helped us with that job, and then came and helped us with that job, and now he's a certified ERT. And we joked that he did it for the free T-shirt. But he's a terrific guy, young person. We need all the young backs we can get for a lot of this work. But that house there was just a suburban house, and it was that you could see where the tornado went right across the hill and took his place out, did some damage on his house. He had insurance, but they're not going to take these out. And so this allows them to get back to normal, to get their homes back. Is that all I had? That's it. Oh, okay. All right. That was it then. Back to that. You know the poster, right? You've seen the poster. It'll be on the big screen upstairs, right? This picture? Okay. Okay. We are disaster response. We're under Global Ministries in West Virginia, right? Jeff Matheny had been, who was talking to me about Jeff, had been chair of that. He's chair of something else now. They got him roped into something, but great guy. We have partnerships, of course, with a New Vision Depot, with Volunteers in Mission, but we also have these 7 mission projects in West Virginia, right? And we have the Burlington United Methodist Family Services, which is in Beckley and in Burlington, of course. And the Beckley kids have been terrific. We call the chaplain. 2 or 3 times now, she's brought a crew down to help us at the depot. And those kids, they love it. They have a great time. They got good counselors there with them. The chaplain's wonderful, and they've worked hard, right? We have some of our ERTs that got a hold of me, I think are going to go up to Burlington to help make apple butter. Maybe they're already there. That's coming quick, isn't it? The big apple harvest festival, right? Yeah. Ebenezer Outreach, you know where that is? Huntington, yeah. I worked with them. I had a lot of students when I was a chaplain at Marshall, 14 years, without a degree. I got a plaque and a tie, but they had an after-school program. They had a medical clinic, so we had a lot of students in varying degrees of training, criminal justice kids into preventive care, right? Education, right? Pre-meds, nursing programs, who would go there and volunteer. And so it was a great connection with our friends over at Ebenezer on 8th Street. House of the Carpenter, right? Familiar with it? Up on Wheeling Island, we took in 1,300 buckets, cleaning buckets, after that flood rose up on the island there. They have 90-some left. And so we're monitoring those, and we're adding 100 more buckets up there so that Wheeling area will have 200 buckets ready. We're doing the same thing in the Eastern Panhandle, believe it or not, at an old chicken plant that has a concrete floor. It's clean. but we're going to store 200 buckets there in case you have flooding in the eastern panhandle or other kind of incidents, even like fires, where you need a cleaning bucket. 7 districts. Every district will have a region that has at least 200 cleaning buckets. We contacted the Boy Scouts of America, the Scouting America organization now, and let them know that they'd made us 5,250 buckets and that we'd sent out 1,300 of them to Wheeling. He got a hold of me and said, did any make it to Vermont yet? He said, our scouts said they thought they saw some in Vermont. I said, well, I don't know. Maybe they did. But in any case, they'd made all those buckets for us. And then he sent that word all over the world, because we had kids there from Israel and Saudi Arabia, all kind of nations, Mexico, and of course Puerto Rico was there, and all these Americans. And so it was neat to see how that connection was made between scouting and us and the people who had flooding in this region. But that was House of the Carpenter was our link. Mike got a hold of me up there, my buddy, and he says, we need buckets like yesterday. And that it was comic, it was comedic because you had David Stilgenbauer and some other people driving those buckets up there, right? A big trailer full of these buckets, calling me and saying, where are we meeting him? Where are we going to unload these? And eventually, and I wish I'd brought that picture, eventually Mike got a hold of a bunch of locals. They lined up clear down the street, probably 200 people, lined up down the street. And that truck, because they didn't even know where to pull the trailer in because of the flooding. They found a place to pull it in, began to hand out buckets, and handed them straight through. I think Mike told me it took 15 minutes to unload all those buckets for people to pick them back up, to take them to clean their homes after the flood. Because the neighbors came out. They all came out and participated. He said there was a big shout when they got it done. But Dave was so tired of that gang because they'd come down here, loaded all that, left here, and went. It's conceivable, one of the things you might think about here is, whoever coordinates that from your church here, is to let Scott Mayberry know at New Vision Depot, if you need us in a pinch, like now, to help come load buckets, we'll get a group, right? Because that was the one time that everybody they normally call wasn't available. So like 3 of them were putting these things in place. 3 of them. And so you can imagine. I told Dave to get whatever you wanted to eat, I'd be sure to pay him back. Well, if you feed them and give them coffee, they're okay, right? Say a word about, of course, Heart and Hand. Donna back there could tell you lots and lots about the ministry at Heart and Hand, and that's Heart plus Hand technically, but South Charleston. Heart and Hand is in Philippi as well. Both these came out of the United Brethren Church, if I remember correctly, and great ministries to neighbors in a variety of needs that need to be met in those regions where people are so vulnerable. Terrific work. And then Scott's Run Settlement House in Morgantown. Just moved to a new facility. Great work there as well. Tyrand, Tigard Valley, Randolph County. That's what that means. But you didn't know that, did you? That's my little tidbit for the day. It'll be on the test. So Tyrand, over in Mill Creek, West Virginia, near Huttonsville. What we say? Near Huttonsville, near Elkins, south of Pittsburgh. And they do a lot of rural ministry in that county, Pocahontas County, Webster County, and I mean everywhere. I'm going to tell you a real quick funny story, if I can. Belinda Toms retired from there about less than a year ago. So this is how people connect with the United Methodist Church. Belinda gets a call from the state police. There's been a power outage. It was the derecho. So somebody's there from Arkansas in an electric truck, right? He's going to fix the power lines on rural West Virginia, Webster County property, and the man greets him with a shotgun. Get off my property thing. I've been greeted that way before, but never at my own church, which is good. But they called Belinda because the state police knew that she connected with everybody. Belinda says, put him on the phone. He gets on the phone and says, now that man's there to help you. You put that gun down and you let him do his job. No arrest, no shooting, no nothing. Puts the gun down. I met the guy later. We were hauling wood up there. Met him. That man from Arkansas never worked so fast in his life. Got that done. The police hung around, and he went on his way to the next house. Right? You see what would have happened. And how many times that happens with these ministries, these mission projects, when they know people and can head off at the past problems that occur. They can really do amazing things. And that's what they do. And you underwrite that with your giving to mission. You know, each one of those organizations, I think, receives around $20,000 from the annual conference now to help underwrite their budget. Okay? We receive some stipend from that. I'm a volunteer. Dave Stilgenbauer gets a small stipend. Scott Mayberry gets a per hour to work at the depot. It comes up from Pipestem area, thank you, to do that work. And they're just A1 people. But these agencies, almost without fail, are run by people who were younger than 40 years old. And they're terrific. Lots of enthusiasm. They love God. They love their neighbor. And they do tremendous work in enlisting volunteers and getting things done. So I want to make a plug for that. But we connect with them in a lot of ways, including, of course, our camp. And we always remind them, if you need us to help with some project that didn't get done this summer, give us a holler and we'll come by, finish it up. Love that you guys do. Y'all do a wheelchair, the ramp builds. We've done a lot of those. Talk about the drug culture. You know, most recent job we did was in Winfield, and this was a young man who was hit by somebody who was high on drugs, and he was paralyzed. So we converted his steps into ramps, and that's with his mom. But just talk about collateral damage of the drug culture, you know. And I know you've seen this with the work you do, but this is an amazing, that thing, the wheelchair ramp ministry is an incredible need that I'm glad you're a part of, because a lot of us do that kind of work, some of which it's impossible to put a ramp on because it's just way up there, but we do the best we can to make sure that people can stay in their own homes, about their dignity in it, and about their ability to survive in those places and hopefully thrive, being able to come in like that. I don't have to tell you, preaching to the choir for that. What questions do you have? And I know I've rambled on for a while, but come on, put me on the spot. Did you know all this stuff? Okay.
No.
Was there anything that surprised you? I think, and I'll say this too, another group that's a part of what we do is a veterans group. And there were a couple of jobs that we turned down that looked like the house was finished, was totaled. And they said, we called the veterans group, and then they went and took care of that. So there are those moments that that people, that we can't do something, we'll hand it off to somebody else. Most recent job we just did in Kanawha County, she sent that out to us and to the Southern Baptist. Does one of you want to take this job? And I had a guy go up and take pictures of it. This guy's retired from Homeland Security. And he's got a brute of a vehicle. And I said, go up there and find this place and let me know your thoughts. He went in, he talked to the homeowner for a while. He walked around, took pictures of it, sent them to me. He says, it's very doable. It's very doable, but it's a lot. And I said, okay, then we're going to, and I wrote back to VOAD and said, we'll take it. And then I got a hold of the ERTs, and I had a team of 8, 3 chainsaws and 5 helpers. Got out there and got that in 4 hours' time, pretty much took care of everything that needed to be done that we could safely do. And so those connections that we make with other organizations are just extraordinary in terms of how we divvy it up, right? Right now, that's the other thing I want to tell you about a grant. This is a biggie for us. I'm nervous about it. Anytime I get a grant, I'm nervous. This is $20,000 from United Methodist Committee on Relief, a group called WASH, W-A-S-H. They've developed water systems in parts of Africa, in Navajo Nation, and other reservations. They've not done much in Appalachia, but now they have. They've sent us, we had all these different meetings with them. We wrote up a grant application. We told them the logistics of McDowell County for us, and I'd mentioned this at annual conference, that we have we're buying a trailer that holds 500 gallons of water, can be sanitized. Brad Davis, the pastor there, is coordinating with a number of people to get water for us, to get drivers for us, to get a place to store the trailer. And every week we'll be taking water, when this thing comes, to about 1,000 people, drinking water. Now, and there'll be a part two of this, and that is that if this works well, then the Lutherans have talked to us about putting one in the Pineville area of West Virginia. It's the same thing there. You know, the mines have poisoned the water. We know this. You know, it's been a mess. You can't drink this stuff. You look at it, you know you're not to drink it. And some of them you can't even bathe with it because it's acidic. So subsequently, though, they've been bringing down plastic bottles. That was one thing to put it over the top. They just said, you can't keep bringing plastic bottles here and fill the landfill. And so now we'll be able to haul with this trailer 500 gallons of water a couple times a week to all these different neighbors and give them containers to use that can be sanitized and make sure they have healthy drinking water. So that's a big one that we're really proud of, and we're real excited about that connection with United Methodist Committee on Relief. That comes from a special program. If you want to designate money for the WASH program through UMCOR, that's what it's used for. Okay? All right. Anything else?
Just quickly, what other, you mentioned the Lutherans and then many government and
Oh.
what other
FEMA.
what other denominations?
American Baptist, Southern Baptist, Presbyterians, PCA, Lutherans, Roman Catholics, Salvation Army. Let me think who else, who we got, oh gosh, among the denominations. Of course, the others are the Red Cross, and of course I mentioned FEMA, the Veterans Organization, and I've lost the name of that organization. But they're great people. Trying to think what other denominations that we work with. Mennonites, oh my gosh. Love the Mennonites. Flood of 16, they did more construction work. And you were waiting to step in and do your part, and they were like, the Mennonites already got it done. And we built ramps with the Mennonites, 18-year-old kids who put me to shame with their construction skills. But yeah, the Mennonites have been a terrific partner as well. Pardon me? Samaritan's Purse. Appalachian Service Project. ASP is they're just, like I said, they fill in a lot of the spaces. Yeah, absolutely wonderful people. I've had a number of college students who went on to work for them, even as volunteers and as employees. To a lesser extent, Habitat for Humanity. They're not normally at the table, but a lot of times we end up connecting with them one way or another. Yeah, and then of course we have the state, different various organizations or entities of state government, for better or for worse, and they're helpful, but there's a lot of hoops they have to jump through, more than we do. That's what we like about what we'll be able to do in these partnerships, is we can cut to the chase, and we can do it or we can't do it. Let your yes be a yes and your no be a no, right? And if we say we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And we're going to do it quickly. If we're not going to do it, we'll just say we can't do it. Other questions? Thanks for that.
I'll give you a comment.
Okay.
And some of the people heard me make it before, but they used to do incense in the Bible.
Right.
And sacrifices, and there's a sweet aroma to God.
Yeah.
So though this isn't seen, that's filled heaven with an aroma.
It does. It does. And I'll talk about some of that in the sermon next here, but you're going to hear me all morning. But yeah, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true, because it just honors God. And there are people time and time and time again who were humbled to tears that we showed up And why did you do that? You know, and they know. They know. Nobody else cared, but you cared. And what we find even is the locals coming by and saying, we brought y'all some food. Keep it going, you know, kind of thing. And just how people, from the model of doing this, learn to watch over one another in love, which is a whole lot better than the dividedness that we have so often in our country and state and everywhere else, right? So if you can, you know, how good it is when brothers and sisters dwell to live together in harmony, right? And it is. It's a great feeling. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay?
All right. Hey, thank you. Thanks, Jim. Can we thank him for...
Oh, thank you. Appreciate your work. Appreciate it.